we've got Hajj by horseback.
This was a really beautiful pilgrimage, and behind the scenes, you brought this story to my attention a few months ago.
So there's this group of Muslims who live in Spain or are connected to Spain. There's a few groups, actually. It's not just one. And they told me about this amazing journey. So the journey was covering 6,500 kilometers. It took 7 months to get to Mecca from Andalusia.
So they're recreating a journey that was taken by Andalusian Muslims more than 500 years ago.
And it gives me this real weight of like actually what it meant. Hello everyone. Today on Culture Bites, we are going to be speaking about a group of men who travelled to Mecca by horseback.
And we're going to be looking at the Western musical artists looking to this region for their interesting musical references.
This is Culture Bites, coming to you every Thursday and brought to you by Abu Dhabi Culture. I'm Enas and Farah.
And I'm Farah Andrews.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm very excited because Jordan is into the World Cup.
Yes!
I'm just going straight in there. There's no hesitation.
You are taking me wildly out of my comfort zone. This is now a sports podcast.
It's not a sports podcast. Everyone calm down. It's not a sports podcast at all, but it's been one of those, it's really exciting. You know, it's one of those things that for every single Jordanian, I imagine, well, my family, we've been waiting for this.
Right.
It's the first time.
Okay, that was going to be my question.
Do I know any other
question
stats?
Time.
No. Do I know how they got there? Not really.
Did you watch the game?
No. Will I be going? Hopefully.
Is this so? Buckle in for how little I know about the World Cup. Is this the World Cup that's taking place next year in America?
Yes, I think. Maybe. Who knows?
Also doesn't know very much. Oh, we've had a thumbs up from a better read sports fan.
Also a fellow Jordanian.
And fellow Jordanian.
Look, am I a sports person? Let's face it. I am a host on a podcast called Culture Bites.
Hey.
This is not called Goal Bites.
You can contain multitudes.
I do like watching sport. We've spoken about this before, but I like water sports, surfing.
Yes.
Surfing.
You went to go see that here in Aberdeen?
I went to go and see that. I'm very excited about next year. I'm already thinking about it. Going to see it.
You're also very much trying to become a sports mom. You want your girls to become sportier.
I just think sports is just so important for your mental health. Everybody, if you want to feel better about yourself, do some sport and improve your posture.
I've obviously have not got children, but I have thought about, having a whole sports team just to finance future decisions, because you look at some of the amounts that those international players are paid.
Listen, have I thought about it with my daughters? 100%. I'm just going to say AI is after all of our jobs, but it is not after a tennis stars.
Exactly. I was like, AI isn't going to be able to kick a football.
No. And my daughters are going to be tall, so I've got to put it to good use.
Is that 100% certain?
Probably not. No. I'm not going to bank on it. There's a lot of short people in my family. My teta was about 4'11".
Really?
Yeah.
That's cute.
And she was so cute. My teta was amazing. God rest her soul. Okay, so talking about sporting, we've got Hajj by horseback.
Right, now this is a sport that I can get on board with.
Horseback. Horseback riding is fantastic. And what an amazing thing. So
this wasn't a sport. This was a really beautiful pilgrimage. And behind the scenes, you brought this story to my attention a few months ago.
It was a few months ago. So one of my dear friends, Rahma, who's probably listening to our podcast, said to me that actually her brother-in-law, who is her baby sister's husband, was taking upon himself this adventure. So he is from a very small group, not that much of a minority actually, in Andalusia, who practice Islam. And there's a beautiful mosque for those who would like to go to Granada. There's a lovely mosque on the hilltop of San Nicolas, which I've been to a few times actually, with this group. And it was Abdul Qadir, Harkazi Aidi, and Tariq Rodriguez. Tariq is of Spanish background.
Yeah.
Hence the Rodriguez name. Abdul Qadir is actually of Moroccan background, but he's lived in Spain.
And there's also Abdullah Rafael Hernandez Mancha. And it was him who inspired this journey.
Yes. So there's this group of Muslims who live in Spain or are connected to Spain. There's a few groups, actually. It's not just one, and they told me about this amazing journey. So the journey was covering 6,500 kilometers. It took 7 months to get to Mecca from Andalusia. And it gives me this real weight of like actually what it meant to say the pilgrimage is a fard, it's a must in a Muslim person's life. And back then, what that actually meant.
Yeah, so they're recreating a journey that was taken by Andalusian Muslims more than 500 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
My silly little brain, when you first brought this story to my attention, my brain took us through Morocco and through Northern Africa. Because I was like, that checks. Because from Andalusia, Morocco, there's points of Morocco and Spain that they're like
Jebel Tariq.
less than 100 kilometers away, point to point. But obviously that isn't how this worked.
No, because it's the sea.
No.
They're not swimming, the horses.
There were boats 500 years ago though, Enas. But
True.
no, this journey was much, 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 much more arduous. It was, so they set off in October and set up north through Spain, through France, south of France.
Yes.
Through the Mediterranean coast of Italy, at the very top of Italy. Then we went through, down Croatia, down to, from there, I think they got to Bosnia.
Yes.
Then Serbia, then Turkey.
Yes.
And then it was down into Syria,
and then
Jordan, Jerusalem, Saudi.
And we spoke to them and they, 7 months ago, they didn't think they were going to be able to cross through Syria.
No.
And that situation's changed. And they also said it was a real moment when they entered into like the first Muslim majority country.
Yeah.
So that must
Bosnia.
have been, into Bosnia. So you're getting into that kind of Eastern European land where suddenly everyone's Muslim. I can imagine taking a trip like this. It must have felt a bit like a unifying thing as well for like European Muslims to have a sense of this adventure.
There must have been some absolutely incredible highs every single day, seeing like this beautiful nature, beautiful community, and just like having this real clear goal. But also the lows must have been intense. They so they set off in October, like I said. It finished last week?
This week.
Just before the beginning. They were there in Mecca in time for Hajj. So they have ridden through the winter.
Yes.
But also they've got to this region in the high spring, early summer. So they've really gone through some extremes. They were kind of, they were in, I've gone back through so much video footage of it to try and plot their exact journey, which is why my brain is now like a map of where they were, because I had every single confirmed place that they stopped off at on Insta. I've like plotted on a map with our amazing graphics team. But they, so they had kind of riding in the snow, extreme low weather in Serbia, in Bosnia over the winter, even getting to Turkey. But then when they got to Turkey, there were like some days where it was like 30 degrees and some days where it was like 10 degrees, like 5 degrees. So it was like very, very, I mean, it's, that's a whole other, well, here's the thing, they didn't.
And they were camping generally alongside their horses.
So what's really beautiful is they found so many communities along the way. In a lot of areas of Europe, they found really good equestrian communities.
Lovely.
People bringing them into their stables, letting them stay in the, like, not like actual stables, but within like the buildings at the stables. And then further along through Europe and in different communities, they were staying at mosques, they were staying within kind of like religious spaces. So they really have found that people along the way to kind of help them out.
Isn't that lovely? Just like the community of Muslims who have like come together to support this beautiful trip. I want to just take a moment, and I just really want to pause for my friend's baby sister Zainab, who isn't actually a baby anymore at all, but she was dealing with the children while he was on this adventure.
So he went off on a 7-month long horse
Which
ride.
is beautiful, and she definitely supported him. And
it was, obviously, we aren't minimising, it was a religious pilgrimage. It was amazing.
And she
but he
was
did
there.
do a 7-month-long religious pilgrimage.
Without the children. But she did meet him in Hajj, and they did Hajj together, which is lovely. Just, isn't that stunning?
There was
really fun.
About halfway through their journey, a influencer whose name escapes me, but they are a Snapchat influencer, and they donated them a caravan that was kind of like served as their support van. So that kind of gave them places to stay as well, especially when it's very cold in the winter.
So we do need to get to the end of this journey, which was getting to Mecca, where everything was on horseback, and then apparently they kind of had to get flights into Medina.
So there were 2 big hurdles.
Yes.
Right. So hurdle number 1 is leaving Europe and going in to Bosnia. They were not allowed to take their horses in to Bosnia or Serbia. Yeah. So they had to leave their horses on that border in Croatia. And then somehow their horses got kind of taken around and met them in Turkey. And so then they finished the journey on their horses.
Good.
But then Saudi, so we spoke to Abdul Qadir directly, and everything he said was extremely, extremely lovely about the whole journey.
Yes.
But he did say that they weren't, Saudi authorities didn't want them to ride through Saudi. So their horses didn't complete the journey with them. Their horses have now found stables in Saudi, and then they got taken to Mecca by Saudi authorities in a positive way.
In a very positive way.
Yeah.
Apparently they were welcomed with a 5-star hotel and flowers.
There we are.
So in a very Saudi positive way. Yeah. Lovely.
The horses, for the animal lovers among us who are wondering about the horses, they are not going to be made to do another 6,500 kilometres back. But they are planning to leave the horses in Saudi with new families and new stables. And
they chose Arabian horses.
Of course.
Of course they did. Known for their endurance.
Speed.
Did you have a horse ride as a child?
Yes.
Of course you did.
I learnt here on Arabian horses.
Did you?
And then when I moved back to England, I rode polo ponies because they were quite flighty.
Oh, fun. Abdul Qadir plays polo.
Of course he does.
Speaking to the National, Abdul Qadir did say that it was like having patience. Let me actually read out the full quote. Please. Have patience when things are getting very difficult, and be grateful when things are easy. And that was his lesson from this journey. But I think the main thing of this was really to kind of showcase Andalusian Muslims. They are a huge part of Islamic cultural history, have a massive stamp on the south of Spain, and have played a big role in actually how Spain looks like in terms of its architectural history and its culture. You lived in Granada, you know this firsthand.
I did. So Spain now is a very Catholic Christian country, but this time 500 years ago it was not. No. All of Spain was Muslim at one stage, and then gradually it changed and back to being more predominantly Christian. But the south of Spain, Andalusia, is the part of Spain that was Muslim for the longest, and most recently. And you, like you said, you really do see the amazing influence in architecture, but also culturally. There's parts of Spain, like in Cordoba, where there are mosques within churches, and then there are mosques, churches and synagogues all within one square. And so that kind of that kind of harmonious community is very real there in parts of Spain.
I think in history, when obviously a lot of the Muslims were kicked out or other things happened. I think the same happened to the Jewish population as well. So there was a real there's a real wobble in Spanish history, which we won't go into details now because I haven't read up enough about it. And my friends will be listening going, but
one thing that we should talk about just before we move on is the kind of very premise of this journey. We mentioned the 3 riders that went. There was also a 4th rider, Mohammed Mesbai, who dropped out because the vets advised that his horses didn't carry on with the journey. So that's a kind of like very good indicator of how well they were looking after their animals on this journey. But the rider, Abdullah Rafael Hernandez Mancha, he is the reason that this happened. He is Spanish, and he made a promise to himself 36 years ago. At the time, he was taking an exam, and he promised that if he passed and he got a job to help his family, he would convert to Islam. And then following that, and he'd obviously read about going to Hajj on horseback and doing this pilgrimage, he promised he would go and do that. He passed that exam with a high mark. He embraced Islam, and now that he has retired from his full-time job as a teacher, he has fulfilled his promise. And so these guys have been training for this since 2021. So it isn't something they just like woke up midsummer and went, yeah, we're going to ride to Mecca.
Oh gosh. I don't think it would be an easy thing to wake up one day and decide to do. You would really have to build up those calf muscles.
I would advise everybody, I know that we do this every week, but go and read the story, look at these photos of the guys doing this journey, this pilgrimage, and also check out their Instagram. Their Instagram is Hajj on horseback, and it's lovely. Like they do kind of like video diaries, like check-ins. They kind of show like kind of a bit of a day-to-day in their lives on this pilgrimage, and it's a really lovely follow.
It's a really beautiful story. So thank you, Rahma, and thank you to all of the Muslims in Andalusia. Hi, and welcome back to Culture Bites. That was a nice break.
We are back.
This is one of my favourite topics because it's like one of the... You know, I listen to a lot of DJ remixes, and I was like obsessed with Nuria, who's like this Saudi Arabian DJ who like really builds up like, you know, Nancy Ajram with like hip hop beats. This is all about, our next segment is all about actually that Asian Arabesque influence on modern Western pop culture, because you brought to light in our last meeting that Ed Sheeran has sampled something from somewhere not Western.
So Ed Sheeran has been on a world tour. Yay. And as we know, because he came here to Abu Dhabi, he also came to Dubai last year, and part of that world tour has taken him to India for a string of dates at the beginning of this year, and that string of dates overlapped with him kind of writing his new album, which is now written and recorded. And so that was earlier this year. And the kind of like result of that is some pretty heavy Indian influences through in the music that he's released. So he has a new song, it's called Sapphire, and there is a line in that song that he sings in Punjabi. And the song translates to "They sparkle just like stars."
Aww.
And he has on the song he's collaborated with Indian playback singer Arjit Singh, who he sings with him on that song. But he's also, Ed Sheeran has said that he's going to release a fully Punjabi version of the single.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. Did you ever like Bollywood music?
Were you?
Huge.
So when I first moved back here, my first like proper reporting job was on like a Bollywood beat, and so I had to get very quickly well read and watched. So yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham. Dil Chanta Hai. Like I grew up around a lot of Asian people, so I've always had like a real affinity like to Punjabi music, and I love that Ed Sheeran has taken, has gone on travels and has taken inspiration from different places, and I really think that's like a building block for us collaborating musically, and it has been for such a long time. So we've pulled together some other tracks.
Because he is not the first.
And he won't be.
No, and he will not be the last.
So I wanted to talk about actually MIA's, one of my favourite songs of hers, which is Jimmy. Did you ever remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, it was great. So it's kind of like a disco-esque and very, very heavily leans into that kind of like disco era in Bollywood.
Can I ask a question though?
Go.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Ooh.
Cut this out if I'm wrong. I don't want to look this down.
No, leave it in.
MIA is of Sri Lankan heritage though,
She is of Sri Lankan heritage,
Okay.
yeah. So it would have been like definitely part of her culture.
Yeah.
I don't think she would have been like taking it without knowing.
And
or,
and that's like
she
the
would be
beauty
very
of it. So it's the kind of take it and like appreciating it and
modernizing.
Yeah.
So with this, with Jimmy, acha.
yes,
I'm not very good at singing, but that kind of, she remixes it into this kind of very playful dance track, which has this like very strong leaning into this disco era of Bollywood.
I love it.
Really, really fun. And it's a great video. So if you haven't seen it, do check it out.
I have a sample that I've discovered in research for this week that I had no idea, which is also from Indian music. Did you know the Toxic by Britney Spears?
I didn't know this.
Neither did I. I went back and listened to it again today and I was like, oh my word, yeah.
So what?
It samples a 1981 Bollywood song, Tere Mere Beach Main. I'm so sorry, I know I've butchered that, which is from a 1981 film, Ek Duj Kelly. So the signature string riff is taken from that song.
Love it.
Yes.
Also, Bollywood has taken from Arabic music. Which
we find ourselves in
a loop,
a love triangle.
There's a song, Nari Nari, and I think that went over to Bollywood. Or vice versa. I can't remember what happened. There's a few. It's really fun.
And so then you bridge us so seamlessly to Arabic music, which is very heavily referenced and sampled in Western music, both pop and rap. So across like multiple genres.
There's like the big famous one.
Talk to me.
Okay, so it's Big Pimpin' by Jay-Z. Dun, 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 dun. Da, 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 da. You know that one?
Yeah.
Okay, that is from Abdul Halim Hafiz. Okay.
But it's not without controversy.
And it's not without controversy because the estate took them. So the nephew of the songwriter sued Jay-Z and Timbaland for copyright infringements. Even though they said they had already cleared the sample from EMI Arabia, they eventually did win the case.
Who's the they that won?
I believe it was the Egyptians that won. Oh, Jay-Z won the case.
Oh.
We've just been told. So Jay-Z did win the case in the end to say that it had been taken. But it's such a famous song in Arabic, and then it's famous in English. But I think a lot of people probably don't realise there's this little loop.
So this is in my research for this, because we can go through so many more songs, and we will.
So many.
But
I'm not
there's
singing
a few repeat offenders. Offenders, I don't mean in a negative way, but Timbaland, who you just mentioned as the producer on the Jay-Z song, Missy Elliott, Madonna, Coldplay, Britney, multiple times. Their songwriting team and them, I guess, they look to this part of the world enormously for references. They use a lot of Sanskrit in their music. They use a lot of chants and Indian percussion and Arabic strings. They're the kind of like very well referenced in Western music.
It's because we got the beats.
Yeah.
the tabla beats.
Talk to me about the line. When is it appreciation? When is it appropriation? And are there kind of cultural sensitivities that you think should be backed off from?
Oh, this is a really deep question. So I think the idea about appropriation is that I am not, this is the ruling that I gather from the tinterweb, is that I take something that's iconically Farah, okay, and I sell it on to all these other people, and I don't say this is Farah's. So for instance, let's say I was to take something that was like, you know, like Mexican, and I'm just like going to repurpose it. A big one online at the moment actually is the dupatta. Do you know about this? So the dupatta in Asian culture is part of a lot of Indian and Pakistani women wear. They wear this small thin scarf that goes around the neck and that kind of drapes down the side.
Are you talking about the European summer look?
Exactly, right.
Awful.
Okay, so obviously, this is a cultural thing. It's a cultural like piece of clothing which has been worn by Indian and South Asian women for beginning of time. Beginning of time. And you could say the same almost about like even the way we like, you know, a lot of Arab women will wear something on their heads. This is how they wear something around their necks, and that's like a cultural thing. This summer totally exploded, and it's on like a lot of Western white women have started to adopt it in their summer wardrobe.
It's you look to like basically very white publications in the West, and they have the European how is it? It was described as like European summer wedding chic.
See, it would be fine if they were like, you know what? There's this amazing thing that Southeast Asian women do, and we just think it's so beautiful, and isn't it amazing? And like, it's about covering our chest for modesty, and we want to like we're honoring it in this week's issue or whatever. But they're not. So
it feels like if people did just say, this summer we're looking east for our. I
think
there's still like
a power
an
imbalance.
Othering in that as well, which is the problem. And
it's kind of really difficult because I think that when you have a culture of people who are like, kind of like they're gaining money for it, basically. But then there's a lot of people that are just like appreciating it. I'm very aware.
We're about to open an enormous can of worms because because we're now going into fashion away from music. This happens constantly. You see it with there are like so many beautiful prints and textiles and cuts they originate from this part of the world and further east, further south. And you see them kind of pop up and like Dolce & Gabbana didn't invent it, but not to call out one individual brand, but I think there are so many brands that have been kind of stung with this because they're kind of pulling at, especially when they are often indigenous craftspeople.
Exactly.
And then for it to be pulled in and then claimed as. And we also see it now a lot with big fast fashion brands that see prints and textiles and motifs in independent craftspeople's work, and then it gets just replicated.
And then it's taken. Bringing it back to music, though, there is a good way of doing it, right? Because you could be like a Coldplay, right? Or even a Sting. Okay, so Coldplay have collaborated, and it's more of a collaboration where they are promoting Palestinian artist Eliana. And we've also seen Sting, who him and his band have actually worked a lot with North African music makers, and have always, really upheld their musical talent as part of their creative process.
And without kind of opening another can of worms, because I know that obviously we've got a ticking clock. Sting is super influenced by this region, kind of spiritually as well as musically, and then you obviously just see that all kind of coming together in his work, and you get a very holistic output that brings in other artists, gives them their credit, gives them their space and their due, and then creates work that people enjoy.
Yes, definitely. And it means it does open up. Like, one of my favourite songs of all time was sampled by Aaliyah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. It's Batuanna Speak. It's like one of my favourite songs of all time. And it was sampled. But
sampled in Britney Spears' My Prerogative.
It's been double sampled. It's a bit Inception right now, guys.
We're allowed to do that.
It's Inception. But if you haven't heard of the famous singer Warda, listen to Batuanna Speak if you want to listen to some like old school Arabic music, and maybe she'll get sampled again.
I mean, it will. It's infinite the amount that people can sample these awesome tracks. Right, let's talk recommendations.
Recommendations. Okay, my recommendation for this week, ahead of my trip, inshallah, to Edinburgh, Department Q on Netflix. It's a British crime thriller by Scott Frank and Chandni Lakhani. And it's all about this kind of like, he's an angry Scottish detective. He's not actually Scottish.
I was going to say he's
British.
English.
He's English.
That's a punchline.
But he's like, he's angry. It's grey. It's moody. And he has a little helper, and his helper just happens to be Syrian. So it made me feel quite connected. Syrian, so a Syrian played by actually a Kurdish guy called Alexij Manvelov, but he's playing Akram Salim.
I'm definitely going to have to watch this. I watched the trailer yesterday.
Honestly, there's like a big Netflix drama with a Syrian character. That's amazing.
Yeah, we're seeing more and more.
And it's quite violent though.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I had to turn it off yesterday. I mean, it's brilliant. It's really clever. Lots of twists and turns, lots of who did it, but kind of like also still like fun and, you know, Scottish, British, but it's quite violent. So I'm giving you a warning, Farah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do violence. My recommendation couldn't be less violent. My recommendation is... You're obviously familiar with Assaline coffee table books.
Yes.
I think everyone will be. They are even if you didn't know you have been to a cafe, you have been to a restaurant, you have been to a shop that has them piled up. And then in particular, the kind of country destination city guides. There's a Dubai one. There's Ibiza ones that are very, very popular. South of France, South America, popular editions. Abu Dhabi is getting the Assaline treatment. Abu Dhabi Bright, the coffee table book. I have seen I've read the PDF version of it, but obviously I want the actual coffee table book, so I'm going to have to go and get myself that. It is beautiful. It is a bright blue cover, and it's a travel guide that kind of talks about the history of Abu Dhabi, the cultural influences of Abu Dhabi, and also some of the amazing things to do here in the city. It has been written by Myrna Ayad, who is a frequent contributor to The National, and she is an expert in Arab art and culture. So she is definitely the right person to have written this. And I'm very excited about having a look at the book when I get my hands on a copy.
That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. This episode has been brought to you by Abu Dhabi Culture. Be sure to follow us on all your podcasting apps.
And you can watch us on YouTube on the National News channel, and also be sure to follow at The National Arts on Instagram and catch every new episode of Culture Bites each Thursday.
Bye.
Bye.